everybody, and welcome to Fiore Calls Game. I am Andrew Fiore with the long-awaited WPRI sports reporter Aniekan Okon. The prodigal son is back in Rhode Island. Aniekan, great to see you, man.
Andrew, thanks for having me. Great to see you. Glad you're doing well.
Yeah, absolutely. For those who don't know, Aniekan and I were in college at the same time. You were, I think, a junior or senior when I was a freshman.
I believe so. 2023. Kind of a lot has happened since then. So I know
Yeah,
I graduated 2023. I can't quite remember when you graduated, but I know we were at URI at the same time.
so Ania
Mhm.
Khan was a WPRI intern, gained notoriety there, then went off to Virginia, where he really made a name for himself, and now is back home working at the station he interned for. And it's been quite the journey for you. But how are you enjoying being back home?
I think it's great to be back. I think the coolest thing about being back is uh, that my parents get to watch me every night. And I think, they ask me every day about work, about the people I work with, Tony Petracca, Mike Montecalvo, Shannon, everyone. And I think it's cool that, of course, I just like to see it as a job, but like to them, it's like the coolest thing in the world. And, you know, bigger picture for them, at least, they immigrated to this country over 30 years ago and sacrificed a ton for me and my two other brothers. And to be able to pay that sacrifice back to them in the form of like, hey, like I can turn the TV on and watch my son every night, I think that's super cool.
Yeah, it's definitely
Yep.
worth coming back home, having
Yep.
your family see you, and it's quite the story, in my opinion. I do want to mention this off the bat. Obviously, today is a tragic day for Rhode Island sports with the incident in Pawtucket. Just a tragic loss of life there in high school sports. And given you cover high school sports, I'm sure you understand to a greater extent just how much this affects the community.
Oh, 100%. I think the Rhode Island sports community, specifically with the Rhode Island hockey community, is very close knit. It's a very small community. And to think something like that could happen in our own backyard is very tragic. My condolences to everyone who is involved in the situation. But um, yeah, no, just a sad situation. Just to think that, people that I rub shoulders with, every day in the media field every day were at the rink when all of this happened. And, luckily they're all safe and all, out of harm's way. But just to think that something like this could happen in our backyard is very sad.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to call high school hockey games here in Rhode Island too, and I got to know a lot of those people that work there, and it hit kind of close to home. So obviously, we're going to keep the victims and all those affected in our thoughts and prayers. But I wanted to mention that right off the bat. But yeah, getting back into it, this has been a very fun period of months for you, as you were telling me off the mic. And I mean, anybody could have figured being a New England reporter during this Drake May run must have been absolutely exhilarating.
I think it's so much fun. I think, it kind of all started with that Buffalo game on Sunday Night Football, which happened to be, it was the night before I started at WPRI. And I think kind of going into that game, a lot of Patriots fans didn't know what we had of this team. They didn't know what they had of this young quarterback that they had. And the fact that that kind of propelled them where they won, I believe, number might be off, but 12 of their next 13 games, and just really just took the league by storm. I think it was like super cool to kind of come into that. And it was also super cool to come into that considering what the last 2 years were like with, that final season with Bill Belichick and kind of how that unfolded and, the disaster of what was Gerard Mayo's lone season with the Patriots. But I think kind of coming in, expectations were very low. You didn't know what you were going to get of Drake. You didn't know what you were going to get of Will Campbell. And, there's a lot of talk this year about, the Patriots, easy schedule this, easy schedule that. And, I always rebut to people about that. Good teams find a way to win. And I think the Patriots, despite the easy schedule, they always found a way to win. Um, And you're not going to remember, oh, that they played, this amount of teams with win percentage and all of that. Honestly, most people don't care about that. Most people are going to remember that this year's Patriots team finished 17-4, were a game away from winning their seventh Lombardi trophy. But more importantly, they laid the foundation for what is going to come for this group for years to come. Drake May certainly going to learn from, the Seahawks defense and that experience of playing in the Super Bowl. And even Mike Vrabel, just that experience of himself. Of course, he played in it, won it 3 times, but this is the first time as in his whole life that he went to the game and didn't win it. So I think it's going to pay dividends for the team just going forward. It's just a matter of what they're going to do in free agency, what they're going to do with the draft class to kind of keep that momentum going.
Yeah, and there's two different directions this team could go in. You see some teams show a ton of potential, but they can never quite get it together again. I think of the 2021 Bengals, or you have a Celtic situation where it's a lot of young stars with a lot of potential who just need to get a little more experience. They weren't quite ready for the moment, and then a few years later they retool, they get the right accessory pieces, you could say, and they make it there at the in the prime of their careers, and they win the whole thing. Do you have an inkling towards which way you think the team's gonna go? I mean, obviously nobody even thought they'd be this far, so nobody really knows. But what would you be inclined to predict for this team?
I think it's going to more. I hate to use a basketball to football reference, but I think what you said about the 2022 Celtics and how they got that taste of the NBA Finals. I think that's more of what they're going to be, and I only say that because I think we go back to late October, November when there was a trade deadline and there was a lot of speculation about, you know, what are the Patriots going to do at the deadline? And then we learned that they didn't do anything and it was more outgoings. Kyle Duggar went out the door, Keon White went out the door. Um, and a lot of fans were mad. They were like, oh, why didn't we do anything? Like we're one of the best teams in the league. I get that. Like sometimes like making no move is sometimes the best move in the sense that um you don't want to like mortgage your future in the sense Drake May, clearly your future. You don't want to give away draft capital in order to, get someone who can help you for maybe 2, 3 years. I personally would rather draft someone who is going to help you for the next 10 years. And of course, this Patriots team clearly overachieved. And I think it's important to realize that, you know, a lot of people I talked to, I was like, yeah, it's disappointing that they lost and how the season ended, but we have to understand, in a way, they skip steps. You go from 4 wins to 17 wins. That's a lot of, it takes teams 3, 4 years to get to that point. And, the Patriots were lucky enough to get to that point where, they had it so quickly. But you kind of have to go through, a letdown of a Super Bowl loss, a playoff loss in the sense to kind of understand and fully appreciate just how the journey is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to agree. I see
Mhm,
some differences
mhm,
with this group, and let me know if you
mhm.
agree or disagree. But some differences between them and the Bengals from about 5 years ago, where they kind of sank all their money into those promising three players or so, and then they didn't bolster up their defense or their offensive line, and it really became a messy situation with Joe Burrow there. And the Patriots seem like they're more intentionally built, and with all the cap space they have, they can really do a lot of things this offseason. What are some priorities you're looking to see this team handle and address this offseason?
I think the biggest thing is probably getting another pass catcher for Drake May. You have a promising quarterback. You want to make sure you have a ton of as many weapons around him at his disposal. But I think after that is probably you're looking at the defense. You kind of have, a game changer at each level in the sense of linebacker, safety, secondary, I should say. You do have it in the interior, but you don't have a game-changing pass rusher. Caleb Chason, great, but he's not someone that's going to wreck and change games. And I think, again, if the Patriots have the opportunity to get someone, whether it's in the draft or through free agency, I think that can help them a ton. It opens things up for Milton Williams and Christian Barmore. And it capitalizes on already a strong defense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'd argue for me personally,
Mm.
I'm looking at the O line more than the D line. That was really what cost us the Super Bowl. I love what this defensive front's been able to do with Chase on. The Milt has been probably the best signing we had all last
Mhm.
offseason. But there's a lot of directions this team can go, and they have a lot of space to do it. Before
To
we,
your point about the offensive line, I do agree in that sense, but I do feel slightly that people are overreacting in the sense that your whole left-handed side are rookies. Of course, it sucked the way the season ended, but going to back to my point about like, it's a process. Like Will Campbell's going to be fine. He
yeah,
has to go through this. And I don't think it's as bigger of an issue. Um, that left side and figuring out what to do. You might want to figure out a long term solution for a guy like Morgan Moses, who is, I believe, 34 years old. You don't want him playing on the right side forever. But yeah, I don't see the offensive line. Yes, definitely help retooling it because you want to protect the franchise. But I don't see it as big of an issue as most people do.
that's fair. And I would agree with you
Yeah.
about Will Campbell. He was playing through an MCL. I think a lot of people overlook that. I mean, he missed what, 4 weeks? So he had a terrible game, don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but I do think he's gonna be just fine. But yeah, no, it's a fair point. I think I have 2024 in my head still too, when May
Yeah.
was just getting rocked. But there's not too many. I feel like there's not many ways the Patriots can get this offseason wrong. There are really options all over the place. Actually, you probably saw the news today that Tyreek Hill got released by the Dolphins. Do you think that's someone the Patriots would look into?
No. Do not touch him. And I only think because at that point, if you add him, you have two aging receivers that are both, of course, Diggs coming off an ACL. But you have two aging 30-year-old receivers that have histories of dealing with ACLs. I wouldn't want it. I would go younger. As much as he could help this offense, I don't see the Patriots pulling the trigger on that. I think Tyreek Hill ends up going to maybe like an LA Rams, like a team that like needs another piece that um could help them go over the hump, but I don't think he's coming to the Patriots.
I hope you're right. I think there's locker room issues there as well.
Yeah,
I don't want anything to do with them. The other name I've seen around is AJ Brown. Do you think he's a
not
likely
not a fan of
trade target?
that either. To your point about like a potential locker room issue, like
Right.
say that's better in the sense that he's younger than Tyreek Hill, but again, like if Drake May doesn't target him 8 times a game for 4 straight weeks, like, is he gonna go to us and say like, oh, like, you gotta have to talk to Josh McDaniels about that? Like, I don't think that's something that the Patriots necessarily need. And I think Mike Vrabel has made the point that it's important for him to have good guys in the locker room. He's a great player, but I don't think he's, of course, I don't think that's like the trade-off you want. You get a good player that like messes up what you have in the locker room.
Yeah, no, I agree, especially with AJ Brown, where you'd be giving up draft capital too.
Yeah.
And Drake's a quarterback. He's a quarterback that likes to switch up who he's throwing to. You look at the amount of different targets he hits per game, it's not something I want to mess with. So I agree with you there. But before we wrap up the Patriots part, what was the average game day like for you? I ran into you before the Giants game on Monday Night Football, and you were running around on the field. Can you take our viewers through what a sports reporter is doing at an NFL game on a given Sunday?
So, it kind of depends on when game start is. We didn't have many 425 games just because of how bad this Patriots schedule, not how bad the schedule was, but just kind of how it lined up this year, where it's just like 1 o'clock, 8:20 games, or the Monday Night Football against the Giants. So I'll kind of take you into um my first, I think it was the Falcons game, was the first Patriots game that I did. So that day pretty much starts at like, get to the station around, I want to say like 9:30, 9:45. Gather all the gear that you need for the day. Drive up, get to Gillette probably by like 11. Um, I There's a photog room, throw stuff all in the photog room. And then pretty much for like the next 90 minutes, I'm just like I like, regardless of football, like basketball, it's kind of been my routine where I kind of just like walk around the stadium, the arena, just to kind of get the vibe of like, you know, the game, what people are excited about, do all of that, grab some stuff for social media. And then game time, obviously we'll go up, watch the game, tweet, take notes, and then after the game, listen to post game locker room stuff. And then after the end of all of that, we'll do our stuff for the shows. And then 1 o'clock game, usually we're out of there. I'm gonna say like 7:30, 8 o'clock. So it's a long day, but it's a lot of fun. I always think all the time, like, of course it's a long day, but there's 60,000 people here paying to watch their favorite team play. I get to do it for free, and that's a privilege that I don't ever take for granted.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
And it's something that you first started at URI. Did you go into college knowing you wanted to do this?
No, I knew I wanted to work in sports, but I had no idea kind of what avenue it was going to take me. I kind of had an interest in, kind of when I was applying to schools out of high school. I was looking at sports management, kind of specifically because, I was like, hey, it'd be cool to like, be a GM one day or be a scout. But I kind of quickly learned that a lot of that has to do, there's a lot of like math that involves with those classes. And I kind of like, I don't want to say like priced myself out, but like math kind of like, I got to the end of high school and I was like, I don't know how much farther I can go beyond like calculus or like pre-calc and stuff like that. So I was like, looking long term, I don't know if this is something that, I want to do, if I'm going to have to be in like different math classes and stuff like that. So it turned out high school senior year, I kind of got into writing and I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. I get to talk to people, I get to watch sports, I get to tell people stories. Um, and then I got to URI and I was like, yeah, it's cool that I did it in high school, but I don't know if I want to do it. But I eventually pushed myself to do it, joined the cigar, really loved it. And then Leah Crowley, shout out to her, who's now my coworker, and Ian, who is was the editor in chief at the time of the cigar, was like, hey, like you should do the newscast, like you'd be a great fit for it. And then kind of just got into it. And some of my stuff sucks. Like at first, like it wasn't great. But I look back at it probably like before I moved back, when I kind of had like some time off to like just like be a human and not be a sports reporter. I kind of looked at that stuff and it kind of just like reminded me of how far I went. But kind of got that kick, then kind of figured, I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. um and then I feel like COVID also helped because, obviously fans couldn't be in the arena stadiums for games, and it was cool to kind of get that unique access to, talk to players, talk to coaches, and kind of be that like vessel for fans at a time where they were like, I want to know this, I want to know that, because they couldn't physically be at the games.
Yeah, it seemed like it was a unique time to be entering the field, especially since you didn't plan on it. Was there a specific group like the cigar or WRIU or one of those that made it all click for you that this could be your future?
I think it's definitely the cigar. I think, you I can remember I would what is it? Started as a contributing reporter, became a staff reporter, ended my time there as a sports editor. But with those people, you kind of spend it's like 5, 6 days out of the week, and like you kind of get really close with them. You're all taking a lot of the same classes, so you're kind of talking about the same things all the time, have the same assignments, interacting with the same professors, even like looking at the same internships and stuff like that. And I think, I was very blessed with, the group of people that I had in the 3 years that I was with the cigar. And I think even like outside of the cigar, I think the alumni base, at least now, um, I feel like even now, like seeing some of the kids that are at the Harrington School, but before when I was there, like people like Nikki Lattarulo, Kate Rogerson, Stone Freeman, Kevin Moore, who is my counterpart now at NBC 10, kind of coming up with them and kind of seeing how they kind of navigated their different experiences and the stuff that they did kind of just like inspired me to be like, hey, like I want that for myself. um and they're all people that I still go to when I need advice, um when I want to talk about stuff in the industry. But yeah, those two particular groups probably come the most to mind that kind of helped shape not only my career now, but especially my time in URI, kind of navigating um, the industry, the field, and kind of how I wanted to go about, creating things for myself.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, I think that's how I met you. I think
Mhm,
you might have been editor at the time. I joined a
mhm,
little bit. I wrote a few articles and I
mhm.
kind of decided I liked broadcasting better. But now I wish I had done more with them. I didn't even tap into the newscast, which I feel like would have been a lot of fun. So the cigar is one of those organizations at URI that really lets you get hands-on experience. And you mentioned internships. You had two very, very good ones. I believe did you intern at Channel 6? Did
Yes,
I see
yes, I
that?
did intern. That
Yes.
was my first internship. Yep. Shout out Don
And
Coyne for getting me that.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to be with two legendary professionals, Ian Steele and Nick Coit. How much did they impact your direction and the advice that they gave you?
I think it was huge because I remember it was Ian. It might have been maybe like the first month that I was there, but we were driving to, I think it was a LaSalle lacrosse game. And we were kind of just talking about, I was kind of picking his brain about like the industry and stuff like that. And he was like, I'm going to be honest with you, like, this internship is going to be a lot like what it is going to be like working in your first market. And I was kind of like, like that's interesting. And he was like, yeah, like in the sense, like, we're going to put a camera in your hand. You're going to go out, shoot different games. You're going to come back, edit them, write scripts, do all of that. And that's how it's going to be in your first market. And I think about that all the time because they weren't wrong at all. Like you're going to go to, I ended up in Charlottesville, and you kind of put a camera in your hand and like you got to go. um and I think it helped having those experiences with Nick and Ian and Maury and Taylor and Sam, and so early on, because when I got to my first job in Charlottesville, nothing was new. Of course there was things that were new, but a lot of it was like, okay, I've gone through this before. I've shot high school football before, I've shot high school basketball before. I haven't, you know I don't have to figure out like, oh, like what's this player's name? Like, I know that when I get there, I should probably get a picture of, the rosters and the scorebook at the end of the game, just so I have an idea of like how to write the highlight, how many players, what this player scored, kind of all of that. But yeah, it's great. I think even now, like I was talking to my brother about this probably like a couple weeks ago. It's like I was one of the many reasons why I was excited to come back was because, of course I learned a lot from them, but I was excited to kind of like, rub shoulders with them and kind of like compete with them. And like the whole situation is so tragic and it's so bad that, of course it worked out for Ian, but it's like Nick is way too talented to kind of not be somewhere contributing at someone's television station. But yeah, I learned a ton from them and kind of so grateful for, the fact that they took this 21-year-old 5 years ago and kind of, showed him the ropes. And, they've been great resources ever since.
Yeah, I had Nick on my show about a week after it happened, and it's just insane to me that he still hasn't gotten picked up somewhere bigger. But I'm glad he's still getting to do some work at Brown. And of course, Ian landed that New Hampshire gig, and I'm sure he's killing it up there. Obviously, can't really watch him,
He
but
is killing it. He is killing it.
yeah, yeah, I'm happy to hear that. And then you interned at WPRI, which ended up being your home. What was it about WPRI that attracted you to want to work there later on?
I think it extends outside of just the sports department. I think, we both grew up in Rhode Island. Um, Everyone knows Yanni Crocus, still talks about Yanni to this day. Uh, but I think just, the pedigree, the people that are in the newsroom that you can learn from, Mike Montecalvo, Shannon Heggie, Tim White. Um, there's just from top to bottom, like just the type of people that you can learn from who've done it for so long, and who have won a ton of awards doing what they do. Um, has been super cool to kind of, pick their brain and kind of learn from them and kind of see how they work every day. But, kind of going back to like, it was the station that I grew up watching. And, it's kind of almost like when I walk in and I have to like remind myself sometimes, I was like, hey, wait, this is like pretty cool. Like, you would, I remember in high school, like texting or reaching out to JP, like asking for like highlights and stuff like that. It's like, oh, like I saw you at the game. Like, is there, where can I like find the highlight? Cause like me and my friends like want to watch it. And like the fact that he's my coworker now is like super cool. Um, but in terms of that internship, yeah, no, it was kind of again like I knew once I worked at Six, I wanted to kind of go over there, kind of learn from there. And I had such a level of respect for just the sports department and what they had done, what Yanni had done, what Maury had done, what Sam's doing now. Um, and yeah, it's been super cool. And I think, working at Six and then working at 12, I kind of learned a lot. And, when I was there the first time, learning as an intern, and then it was kind of similar to when I was working there part time. It was like, yeah, we want to like get you ready for, your first job may be here, it might not be here, but like we want to kind of throw you in the fire, kind of put you in different situations because, you've expressed to us that this is something you want to do long term. So let's get you ready. Um, and that 1 year that I was there, kind of working there, it was a ton of fun. I learned a lot. Got to meet a lot of the people that I'm interacting with now for the first time. Um, and yeah, it was just such a great experience. And then it's great even now because it's like, now that I'm back, a lot of them, I didn't think when I came back a lot of people would have, as many people would have remembered me as they did 3 years ago. And I think I've been pleasantly surprised to, athletic directors, coaches. They're like, oh yeah, yeah, I remember you, stuff like that. Yeah, things have been great. Happy that you're back. Excited that you're back. Um, so yeah, that's been great.
Yeah, I mean, I had the same internship. I agree. The culture there is just tremendous, and it's just really special to be able to be there in those big buildings, or interacting with those fans, even at the high school level too. Like just getting a taste of what that life is like is something very unique that they provide, and the people are phenomenal. It's just some of
And
the best people.
And I think even just like outside of sports, like I'm just thinking of like the last 2 months that we've kind of dealt with. Of course, the unfortunate situation at Brown. We've had three snowstorms. We've had a Patriots run, and of course, we have the situation going on today um, in Pawtucket. And I think and a lot of those things have nothing to do with sports. But I think it's been cool to see how, your colleagues and your coworkers operates in situations of stress like that and how they deliver the news and how they go about their business. And of course, it's not sports, but a lot of those little things and delivering information translates regardless of what department you're in. And I think that's been you watch it from afar, but like being in the building and kind of seeing how everything operates has been so cool to kind of watch.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And to me, I was there when it was Taylor and Sam and Derwin, and I had the sense you would be back at some point, but you made the
I've heard
decision
that
to
a
go
lot.
down.
Yeah, no, I've heard that a
Yes,
lot, but yeah.
I think I even asked Taylor. I was like, "So why isn't Aniekan here, and when is he coming back?" Like, I'm sure he'll be back when
Yeah,
you got to get him back here, right?
yeah.
Like, and it was almost destiny fulfilling itself that you did end up back here, but you chose to go to Charlottesville to get some more practice. And what was that decision like for you to choose to move out of the state?
It was kind of an easy decision, and I don't say that to say that like I wanted to run away, but like, bigger picture, I was kind of looking at it as, I was 22 years old, 22 years old at the time. I lived in Rhode Island my whole life. I went to school in Rhode Island. I think it's so easy to get caught up in your own bubble and your own way of like how people do it here. And I was like, you know, I think it's time. Like, I think it's time to, even for my own personal growth, like step away, go somewhere else, learn how, learn a different way of life, learn how different things are, experience a different level of sports. And I kind of went evaluating that process. I knew I wanted to be in a college town. I knew I wanted to cover Power Four teams. So that's kind of in general. Of course, I casted a wide net, but I was kind of generally looking like, okay, like if it came down to it, these are like the three, four things that I'm looking at if, a job offer comes up. And of course, um, it lined up Charlottesville. Um, Great market. Obviously, like a lot of people know about Tony Bennett and the basketball team and stuff like that, but they also have a tremendous soccer program. Bruce Arena, the former New England Revolutions coach, started his career in Virginia and kind of built the program to what it is now. And then even the baseball team, consistently in the top 25 in the country, one of the better programs nationally. Brian O'Connor, who is now the coach at Mississippi State, pretty much built that program from scratch and helped lead the program to their first national title in 2015. And then even the smaller sports, swimming and diving, we so often only see those sports during the Olympics, but getting to cover someone like a Gretchen Walsh, who a lot of people became accustomed to with what she did during the Paris Olympics, but she's right in our backyard, um, and doing sorts of types of things, winning national championships. The women's swimming, diving, and program has won the last five national championships. So getting to experience that, and then even with women's tennis, men's tennis, they had both won national titles before I had gotten there. So just so often it's like football, basketball, baseball kind of all get the attention. But I really love the fact that, you know, overall as an athletic department, like it was really sound, really like it was excellence regardless of what program it was. And, you know, in any given moment, you might be covering a lacrosse Final Four, which I had the privilege of doing. My first year there, field hockey went to the Final Four. The baseball team went to Omaha. The basketball team went to the NCAA tournament. You do all a lot of those cool things that I probably wouldn't have experienced here. Um, and yeah, kind of just going off of that, like it just felt like, yeah, it's time to go. Let's experience something else. And I always looked at it like, if I didn't like it, like home was always going to be home. Like if I had to pivot, go do something else, like there was always a chance to come back. Of course, I came to love it. I think of my time in Charlottesville very fondly. I met um, two of my best friends there, and we talk all the time. Um, and think about kind of all the memories and all that stuff that we kind of made there. But um, and even because of that, like the decision to come back home wasn't easy because it's like I've learned a lot away from home. I've grown a lot away from home. I didn't want to necessarily get caught up in the comfort of coming back home. Um, so but yeah, like, there's, a lot of places that people end up for their first market, like Charlottesville. I got very lucky ending up there.
And Virginia's an interesting place to me because it's north of the Mason-Dixon, but it's not quite the Northeast. And especially in sports, there's a lot of cultural differences there. And I mean, college sports is king down in the South. But again, Virginia's kind of in that middle territory. Did you notice a lot of differences in the way sports were treated and in the culture around sports there? Or was it pretty similar to the Northeast?
Well, I think it was similar in the sense that, like, it's funny. I literally had this argument with Kevin Moore, like a month or two ago, and I was making the point. I was like, Virginia didn't feel like the South. Like it felt a lot like, in a lot of ways, it felt like it wasn't New England because it didn't have the grit of New England, but it wasn't the South. It was kind of like, I don't want to call it like the Mid Atlantic, but it wasn't like, it was kind of like in that like middle ground a little bit. Um, but I think, I think the main difference is I think it was pretty cool to see in the sense of like high school sports, especially with like high school football. And you see it a little bit here in Rhode Island, but like it's no joke. Like high school football, like whole towns shut down for high school football games on Friday nights. I think probably the best example I could think of is Louisa County football. They were the consistently the best program that we covered in Charlottesville the 2 years that I was there. They had two kids, Daisier Carter, who is going to play at Rutgers next year, and Savion Hyder, who's going to play at Michigan next year. But pretty much there, they know how to party. They know how to have a good time on a high school football. They treat you well. They were always hospitable. They had the whole like display with like fireworks and like motorcycle like driving on the field as the players are like running onto the field, and it's like, oh, like wow, this is cool. um, but yeah, no, I think, of course, like in Virginia compared to Rhode Island, everything's like a little bit bigger, talent probably a little bit better. I don't want to say a little bit better, it's probably a lot better.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest. Um, but yeah, no, it's just like I like I was like I would think from time to time, I'm like, this doesn't feel like parts of Virginia felt like the deep south, but at least in Charlottesville where I was like, this feels like, this could easily pass for like, if it doesn't have like the southern charm, like this could pass for like a mid-Atlantic or like maybe like a New England town. Um, but yeah,
I feel like the DMV has sort of its own thing going on, and
yeah,
I think of it as a factory for talent. Even those
100%.
URI teams, I feel like every year it's like 10 DMV guys.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
100%. And it's kind of crazy because it's literally like, um there's actually a kid that I covered, Connor Lyons, in Virginia that just committed to Bryant. And it's so crazy that like a lot of the kids, end up, in the New England, because it's just a lot of the programs in New England, Mid Atlantic, even in the Virginia area, they're all battling for those same players and stuff like that. Just because there's so many good programs, there's so much good talent, um, and yeah.
What was that Tony Bennett squad like covering? Because it's an impressive group with their own unique style of play. It must have been cool to get the inner mechanisms, get a peek at that.
Yeah, it definitely made me appreciate a different style of basketball. Obviously, like, so I like enjoy like high pace, like getting up and down the floor. But obviously with Tony Bennett, it's a lot different. You're playing slow, you're playing mostly eating most of the shot clock. Um, you're defending really well, um, and again, like very slow pace. So it was like like I remember, I was like, this is boring, but like it's efficient and it works. It's like a system. Um, so it was cool to like kind of like see that, and I was only there for his final full year there. Before, of course, he ended up retiring, and they in that final year, you could kind of see them. They were kind of like tweaking it a little bit because at the time, like, and still now, college basketball is evolving so much, and pushing the pace. They were pushing the pace a little bit more, um, trying to do a little bit more motion, kind of do all that stuff. But I think it was kind of cool to watch a legend like Tony Bennett and interact. Of course, great basketball mind, but he was also like tremendous with us. Um, just with the media and stuff like that. And yeah, it was definitely like a sad situation. Like, of course, you understand why he did what he did, but it was, it was shocking to everyone because, like, um, Tony Bennett's like a figure in Charlottesville. And, when the news kind of came out that he was like, yeah, I'm going to retire, a lot of people were devastated because, he had built this program to the level where, of course, a lot of people remember how 2018 was where they lost to UMBC, but to be able to bounce back from that and, deliver the program its first national title, yeah, people love him there. And he's still around, like he's still at games, he's still a member of the community. Um, so yeah.
I always liked UVA because when I was in high school, they played at the Mohegan Sun tournament that they do there,
Yep.
and I got to take selfies with Mamadi Diakite,
Yep.
Jay Huff, some of those guys from the year after the title, and Tony Bennett was one of them. He was really nice. But yeah, I feel like that system they had where they would hug the 3 point. I forgot there was a name for it. The
Pack
whole
line.
system he came up with.
Pack line
Pack line.
defense.
Yes,
Yep.
thank you.
Pack line defense. Yep.
I feel like the pack line and the slow movement was something that really was a product of its time and only like worked at the it was like a right time, right place thing.
Yep.
And I have to imagine like I'm not surprised to hear that they kind of moved on from it. But it must have been cool too having that connection with the women's team too, with Tammy Reese playing for them back in the day with Dawn Staley. And uh she always talks about how that's her home and now you get to go back and work with her again.
Yeah, it was super cool. Kind of when I had like announced that I was going to Charlottesville, she was actually one of the first people that had reached out. She was like, "Yeah, give them your best. Like that's my alma mater and stuff like that." And kind of seeing, learning about her career there, and what she was able to do, and like how fondly people speak of her, was kind of cool because she like for me at least, like when I think of my career, she's like one of the first coaches that I've had the chance to like really like intently cover. And like I had only known her from like, her time at Rhode Island, but to kind of get like a peek back and kind of, how it all started for her, and kind of see that was super cool.
Yeah, I had her on my show. I never knew she was roommates with Dawn and
Um,
the stories she had to share. It's really awesome. Where is she among the your favorite coaches you worked with? And is there a coach that was your favorite to cover?
I've had a chance to cover a lot of great coaches, but yeah, I think just as I look fondly at my time at URI and like some of the women's teams that I've had a chance to cover. And they're doing great this year on the doorstep of being a nationally ranked program, and it's great to see that you know what she's been building for the last 7 years is starting to come to fruition a little bit. But I gotta say, like, I gotta preface, like, love all the coaches, but Tammy Reese is up there number one probably, just because, just the level of access that, of course, you as a journalist, access is everything. And how candid she is, how she's herself. Like, when she's like passionate about something, you're gonna hear about it. When she's mad about something, you're gonna hear about it. And I think it's cool to see how much she loves the women's game, how much she wants better for the women's game. Um, but yeah, no, pleasure for her to pleasure at having the chance to cover her. Drawing a blank at some of the other coaches that I've had a chance to cover. But yeah, no, I've covered a lot of coaches. Like, even thinking like, UVA men's lacrosse, coach Lars Tiffany, Rhode Island connection, was the coach at Brown before he got the job at UVA. But one of the funniest coaches. Well, I feel like a lot of times when we covered him, he wouldn't talk about lacrosse. He talked about like football or like other sports and stuff like that. And it was always just like a great conversation. Uh, and me, full preface, I'm not the most knowledgeable person about lacrosse, but learned a lot from him just, picking his brain about different things.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in this industry, you have to pick up a lot of sports that you don't watch
Right.
casually. What has that experience been like for you? And what is the number one sport that you find yourself enjoying covering that you would have never imagined before you started this career?
Easy answer, because we had this conversation in the sports office the other day: college baseball. I don't think college baseball
Ooh.
gets enough credit um, compared to some of the other sports. I think it's so fun. I think it's kind of crazy the fact that like one game might be you might win a game 4-3, and then the next day you might get killed like 20 to like 1. And you literally have to, all right, you might lose, but like, hey, like, we got to get back on the mound, got to get back on the diamond, kind of do it all over again tomorrow. But I think the level of talent, um, and I think there's probably more parity in college baseball compared to college basketball and college football. And I think that's what like makes it cool.
It also doesn't hurt when your boss is Sam Knox, who's got the multi
I'm not even
screens.
not no not even saying that. Oh, I know Sam's a college guy, but we literally talking the other day, me, Morgan, and Sam, man. Um, he was like, "Yeah, like I wish I had a chance to like be in like a college baseball market where it's like everything." And I'm like, "Dude, it's great. Like having a chance to cover like a home super regional, having a chance to cover a home regional. Would have loved to go to Omaha. Hope that's something I get to do at some point in my career. But it's so fun, especially like, in a college town where like everyone's excited about the team, everyone's gathering together at the park, and it feels like a really like fun like family environment and stuff like that. But yeah, college baseball is fun. And yeah, I know it doesn't get as much credit up here because maybe there's not as many good programs as there are down south, or that professional baseball, we got the Woot Sox, the Red Sox, the Yankees, all of that kind of take
It's
king.
also 2
Or to
degrees for half the season. I
right,
think that's what the
right,
biggest thing is, let's be
right,
real.
right, yeah. So but yeah, college baseball, so much fun, so much fun.
That's something I've gotten into more the last honestly, Sam helped me get into it more, and then I because I got to know players working in the NECBL,
Yeah,
like, I knew, like, 5 UConn players, some of them still there, and all these URI guys, and following their journeys helped me get into it. I'm like, "Wow, this is awesome." The
yeah.
playoffs are confusing as hell, but it's awesome.
Yeah, no, that's it's that's one of the things that you gotta like. I've always had to like explain to people. They're like, "How does double elimination work?" And it's like, oh, like, or even if you get to like the winners bracket of the what is it, the regional, they're like, all right, like if we lose, we have to play again tomorrow. But if we win this one, the series is over and we advance to supers. And it's just like it's confusing, but like it's a lot of fun.
It's something I think half the state had to learn about on the fly when URI won the A10 last
Yeah.
year, which was a treat, and maybe it's going to give you more of a chance to cover some college baseball.
Yeah, no, that'd be a lot of fun. It's funny. I remember because I think at that point, well, yeah, at that point, because UVA didn't make the NCAA tournament that year. But I remember sitting in my apartment at, they're like, oh, is this game, if it doesn't go on by 11 o'clock, they're gonna have to play it tomorrow. But I remember sitting up at like 10:15 when the game finally went on and watching the full game, kind of hoping they would beat, I think was it Dallas Baptist?
It was,
Or Little Rock,
yes.
Dallas Baptist, and kind of hoping it's like, yeah, like, this is fun that they're in it. They're in, it's been 9 years since they were last in the NCAA tournament, and um, yeah, it was cool. Kind of, hoping for big things. I know they were picked first in the A10 this year. I know Coach Serrato does a great job building that program, taking advantage of local talent. So I think, I hope they could do it again this year.
It'd be a blast, and it's great seeing where those guys end up. Tristan Levesque on the Savannah Bananas now, and Anthony DePino, one of the top prospects for the Chicago White Sox. Really a special group. Um, but you're going to be getting into MLB season in a minute, it feels like. What will your duties look like for the Red Sox and Woo Sox?
Um, from at least what I remember, we didn't cover the Woo Sox too much. At least when I was an intern, the only thing that we did was we covered Chris Sale. He had a rehab start.
Oh, that's
Um,
right.
yeah, that was the only thing we did. I know with Red Sox, all of this is still in flux because of course the season's still over a month away. But I know we cover opening day. I think that's against the Padres on a Friday, which will be a lot of fun. Um, we'll see who ends up going to that, but I think either way it'll be a lot of fun to cover that. And then of course, playoffs, if any local stars come back, Jeremy Pena is probably the biggest one that come to mind, Providence, shortstop for the Astros. Rocco Baldelli, of course, when he was a Twins manager. I don't know
Yes.
where he is right now.
He's at the
I know he's a
Dodgers in
Blue
their
Jay.
front office.
Dodgers. Got it. Okay. Yeah. So I know, like, in those situations when there's any local stars, I'm sure that there's a ton of local prospects here that I'm sure will get called up that may warrant a trip to Fenway Park. But it's kind of how it is. Yeah. There's a lot of games. It'd be fun, of course, to cover all of them. I think it'd also be exhausting. But we kind of try to get up there whenever we can.
And then the other thing around the corner, the NBA and NHL playoffs simultaneously. Now, will this be your first time in this market getting to cover those?
So I did get a chance to I covered that Bruins Panthers series where, where the Bruins broke the
Ugh,
points record and then lost in the first round of the playoffs. I was at game 2, which was a ton of fun. I always tell people hockey does not get enough credit. I think
oh, yeah.
can appear hockey can appear boring like watching it, but I think the environment and being there is so much fun. Um, so um yeah, I got to cover a Bruins playoff game, but I've never been to a Celtics game. Like even like I'm a fan of the Celtics, but I've never covered
You
in
never
that
been?
sense. Nope. Yeah. So
Oh my
even
gosh.
even with the Red Sox, like I've never gone to a Red Sox game. I did go to Fenway Park in November for a concert, but I've never been to Fenway Park for a game. But that is going to change. I
Yeah.
promise you that.
If I had any money,
Mm.
my guess is someone from PRI will be there. And this is me just making a guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, March 1st is what I'm hearing. NBC suspiciously moved the Celtics Sixers game to the 8 p.m. slot, bumping out SGA. And Tatum has been rumored to be coming back in March. So I have to imagine that's something that might send people up for. But if not, the playoffs are incredible there. I lined up perfectly at WPRI with that 2024 run.
Mhm.
So I got to be there for the Heat and Cavs series, which were unreal. And the Celtics are shocking everyone right now, and actually being contenders to take the entire East. So maybe you'll get to cover a finals run.
Yeah, no, it'd be a lot of fun. And I think the great thing about this team is a lot like the Patriots. Like, no one expected them to have the season that they're having right now. And I think, watching them numerous games this year, I think they're just so much fun to watch. Like, they play for each other. The role that Jordan Walsh has certainly formed for himself on this team has been great. We all know, I think most Celtics fans know how good Peyton Pritchard is, but I think it's nice to see kind of the league give him the respect that he's gotten this year. And then even Jalen Brown, like we know, like I think a lot of us knew how good of a player Jalen Brown is, but for him to take that next step uh, in Jason Tatum's absence has been pretty cool to see.
Yeah, being someone who is defending him even during the left hand
Yeah,
agenda and the trade rumors, it's satisfying to see. And Hugo Gonzalez is another one
yeah,
that's been really impressing. So, me personally, I think they're winning within the next 2 years. I think
yeah,
I feel like next year, to be honest.
yeah. No, I think so too. I think the interesting thing with them, at least, is going to be like, does Vucevic stay long term? Um, if he does, great. If he doesn't, you gotta kind of have to figure out like what you're gonna do because of course, Kata is great, but like you're gonna need someone kind of in that interior to kind of supplement Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown, like you saw with, of course, Porzingis didn't play most of the year, but like when he was there, you saw the impact that he had.
Yeah, I mean, 20 something points in game one didn't exactly hurt us.
Right,
The
right.
center position's been a gap. I feel like for the entirety of the Tatum era, except for when KP was here.
You can even make the case with, Time Lord. I know that's a time that a
Yeah.
lot of people like forgot, but um,
I hope he's doing
he
all
was
right.
yeah, no, he was very serviceable for us. When he was with us. I was reminded of him. I think the Celtics played the Kings a couple weeks ago, and I was like, oh wait, he was our player. I think is he on the Kings? I think he's on the Kings. But I was like, oh yeah, that was one of our players. Like, you know, a while ago, and I was one of them I was a Robert Williams defender. I was like, yeah, no,
Yeah.
this guy could, he's good, but then of course, couldn't stay healthy. So you kind of have to cut your losses in that sense.
And then we've got RIFC, which is a something that didn't exist when you were in
Nope,
college. And
nope.
from what I remember, you're a soccer guy, right?
Big soccer guy. Go up the
Yeah.
Chelsea. But yeah, no, I'm super excited to get the chance to cover RFC. I've never been to a game. Actually drove by the stadium a couple months ago for the first time I wanted to see what it looked like. I'd always seen like videos and stuff like that of them building it and the environment and stuff like that. And it was like super cool to kind of see it up close and personal. But yeah, no, I'm super, not only just because I'm a soccer guy, but I think a lot of people I've talked to in the community, there's a pretty strong soccer community in Rhode Island. And I think that RIFC has done a great job of capitalizing off of that. And even with soccer, I think you get, just because it's a global game, you get a ton of people from all types of places across the world. And, you get to explore their backgrounds and like kind of like, you know, really understand like, what makes them, the player they are. And yeah, it'd be cool to kind of explore that a little bit more. And then even considering, we're in a World Cup year, the World Cup is going to be played at, makes me cringe saying this because Providence is a lot closer than Boston, but the World Cup is going to be played at Boston Stadium. So, um, but yeah, no, it's super cool. Their season starts in a few weeks. Um, and yeah, it'd be cool to, because I've always watched it from like afar, but like to actually like, cover it and like actually like go to a game and like experience that firsthand is all going to be super cool.
Yeah, I've got it. I don't know if you know this. You probably don't yet, but will you be covering the World Cup up there in Foxborough?
The plan is we're still kind of waiting to like finalize a couple things and stuff like that, but that is a part of our coverage plan. Mostly because the World Cup is going to be on our air. So the plan is to have us cover that, but as we get closer, I'm sure we're gonna figure some stuff out.
And then there's the possibility of Bryant being one of the campsites. I don't think it's been chosen yet, but you're getting
I
some
think I think it
opportunities.
ha- I think it has. I
Oh, really?
might be wrong. I might be wrong. I might be wrong. But I think it's been, or I might be confusing that it might ha I don't know if it's been chosen or it's been chosen, but we don't know what team is going to be based out of there. So that'll be interesting.
Well, as a soccer guy, you're gonna have a fun summer, I think,
Yeah. Oh, for
regardless.
sure. For sure. Yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited. Kind of, you know, I was thinking about this the other day, just the fact that coming to PRI where, the Patriots go on a Super Bowl run and then, you know, potentially covering a World Cup all in the same year. Like a lot of people, that's like something that most people don't ever get to do in their career, let alone will potentially have the chance to do that in a year is super cool.
Oh yeah, it's one of the best places to work. I mean, even the two things you mentioned, plus Celtics and Bruins playoffs, the culture here is just amazing. Competitive D1 teams. I got a taste of it with my internship, and I've always wanted to get back to that level. And watching you do it, you going from the intern there to being a reporter and being back with the people that taught you has been really inspirational. I think for everyone that was part of the URI Harrington School. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Do you have any closing thoughts for us before we wrap up?
Um, yeah, I'll kind of end a couple things. Yeah, like I think um it's kind of cool to see kind of how the journey is kind of unfolded for me, like coming, leaving and then coming back and kind of course I've come back, but kind of making the experience a lot different than what it was when I left has been super cool. Of course, I was still in a way, of course I was in college, not a kid, but I was a kid in a way. And like I was still like learning and stuff like that and trying to figure it out. And like to be able to go away, come back and then like apply that and you know, yeah, at a place that I've learned so much has been so fundamental to my career has been super great. And I think um definitely super grateful for the way it's all unfolded, and it's great because I think we have such a great team. I tell people all the time about, like it's so fun to come into work every day. Like we have Sam is super fun. I think it's unique that like I was his intern and now we're working alongside each other. And then Morgan's great. Like I can't say enough like how it's so much fun to come into work every day. And I think you know um of course it's like cool to like work in sports, but like to think like you want to like enjoy the people that you work with. And like it's of course I'm back home, but like I spend a lot more time with Sam and Morgan than I do with my own family. So I think it's great that like it's just like of course we got to get stuff done, but like it's so much fun and we get a lot of stuff done. And I'm kind of excited to see what we all do as a group, within the next year or two.
Yeah, it's a great group there. Give everybody up there the best from me. And I really appreciate you coming on, man. We talked about it for a while. Glad we could finally get it done. And yeah, thanks again. I'll be seeing you on the TV and I'll definitely be sure to keep in touch.
Now, Andrew, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. All right, this was Aniekan Okon on Fiore Calls Game. Thank you guys all for watching, and I'm gonna have more guests in the near future. So keep an eye on those socials. But for now, this is Fiore calling game.